Imagine a world locked in brutal, all-consuming conflict. Legions clash, castles crumble, and the fate of kingdoms hangs precariously in the balance. This isn't just the realm of dragons and sorcery, but the stark reality of history. Today, we draw parallels between the epic struggles in Game of Thrones and the defining battles that truly shaped our world. George R.R. Martin's Westeros, with its intricate political machinations and brutal wars, often feels uncannily like our own past. The War of the Five Kings, for instance, echoes the War of the Roses in 15th century England, a dynastic struggle that bathed the island in blood and ultimately forged a new monarchy. The ambition of figures like Daenerys Targaryen, seeking to reclaim a lost throne with an iron will and a loyal army, mirrors the relentless drive of conquerors throughout history. Consider Charlemagne, the king of the Franks, who, by 800 AD, had forged an empire stretching across much of Western Europe through relentless campaigning. Leadership is paramount in any war, fantasy or real. The burden on Jon Snow, leading the Night's Watch against an existential threat, finds a historical echo in the stoic resolve of figures like Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general who, in the 3rd century BC, led his army, including war elephants, across the Alps to challenge Rome. Hannibal's audacious crossing of the Alps in 218 BC, a feat of logistical and military genius, was a move as bold as any dragon rider's charge. His objective, to strike at the heart of the Roman Republic, a superpower of its time. The strategy of siege warfare, a brutal staple in Game of Thrones, is deeply rooted in history. The Siege of Winterfell, a desperate defense against overwhelming odds, recalls the prolonged and devastating siege of Constantinople by the Ottoman Turks in 1453, a turning point that marked the end of the Byzantine Empire. Constantinople, the jewel of the East, fell after a 53-day siege led by Sultan Mehmed II. The sheer scale of the Ottoman army, estimated at over 80,000 men and a formidable navy, against a vastly outnumbered Byzantine force, highlights the desperate nature of such defenses. The treachery and shifting alliances in Westeros are mirrored in the complex political landscape of medieval Europe. The Hundred Years' War between England and France, from 1337 to 1453, was a series of conflicts fueled by dynastic claims and shifting loyalties, involving legendary figures like Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc, a young peasant girl who claimed divine guidance, rallied the French forces, notably at the Siege of Orleans in 1429, turning the tide of the war. Her story is a testament to how belief and charismatic leadership can inspire armies against seemingly insurmountable odds. The tactical brilliance displayed by commanders in Game of Thrones, such as Robb Stark's flanking maneuvers, finds historical parallels in ancient military minds. Consider the Battle of Cannae in 216 BC, where Hannibal executed a masterful double envelopment, annihilating a larger Roman army. Hannibal's victory at Cannae was so devastating that it's still studied today. He inflicted an estimated 50,000 Roman casualties with a force smaller than his opponents, a tactical masterpiece of encirclement. The sheer brutality and the high cost of war are unflinching themes in both fantasy and history. The Red Wedding, a shocking act of betrayal and slaughter, reflects the grim reality of medieval political assassinations and massacres, where honor was often a casualty of ambition. Such events recall the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre in France, 1572, where thousands of Huguenots, Protestants, were killed in a wave of Catholic mob violence, a stark reminder of how religious and political fervor could erupt into unimaginable bloodshed. The struggle for survival against overwhelming odds, a constant motif in Game of Thrones, is deeply human. The Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BC, where King Leonidas and his 300 Spartans, alongside other Greek allies, held off a massive Persian invasion force for 3 days, is a legendary example. Though ultimately a defeat for the Greeks, the stand at Thermopylae became a symbol of courage and sacrifice against impossible odds, demonstrating that even a small, determined force can inflict significant damage and inspire generations. The technological advancements in warfare, from the siege engines of Westeros to the formidable armies of the Seven Kingdoms, have their roots in historical innovation. The development of gunpowder weapons, for instance, revolutionized warfare starting in the 14th century. The introduction of cannons and later firearms drastically altered battlefield tactics, rendering traditional castle defenses obsolete and paving the way for new forms of military engineering and strategy. The Ottoman use of massive cannons at the Siege of Constantinople in 1453 was a pivotal moment. The sheer scale of armies in historical conflicts often dwarfs even the grandest fantasy portrayals. The Battle of Borodino in 1812, during Napoleon Bonaparte's invasion of Russia, involved over 250,000 soldiers, making it one of the bloodiest single days of the Napoleonic Wars. Napoleon's Grand Army, at its peak, numbered hundreds of thousands, a logistical and human undertaking of immense proportions. His campaigns across Europe in the early 19th century reshaped the continent's political map. The concept of the Long Night, a period of darkness and existential threat in Game of Thrones, resonates with historical periods of widespread famine, plague, and societal collapse. The Black Death in the mid-14th century, for example, wiped out an estimated 30 to 60% of Europe's population. The bubonic plague, originating in Central Asia and spreading along trade routes, caused immense suffering and societal upheaval, leading to labor shortages, peasant revolts, and profound demographic shifts that took centuries to recover from. The clash of cultures and the struggle for dominance are central to both epic fantasy and historical narratives. The Punic Wars between Rome and Carthage, spanning over a century from 264 BC to 146 BC, were a monumental struggle for control of the Mediterranean. These wars saw the rise of legendary figures like Scipio Africanus, who ultimately defeated Hannibal at the Battle of Zama in 202 BC, marking a decisive victory for Rome and setting the stage for its eventual empire. The human element, the fear, courage, desperation, and resilience of individuals caught in the maelstrom of war, is what truly connects us to these historical events, much like the characters in Game of Thrones. The charge of the Light Brigade in 1854, though a tactical blunder, remains an enduring symbol of bravery. Despite its disastrous outcome, the charge became a powerful poetic symbol of duty and sacrifice, showcasing the human cost of war and the complex emotions that drive soldiers into the fray, even in the face of certain death. From the scorched earth tactics of medieval sieges to the strategic genius of ancient generals, the echoes of Game of Thrones are found not in dragons, but in the enduring patterns of human conflict, ambition, and survival. These historical battles weren't just about conquering land, they were about forging identities, shaping cultures, and defining the very course of human civilization. They remind us that the grandest, most brutal epics are not born of fantasy, but of the very real struggles of our ancestors. What other historical events mirrored the dramatic narratives of our favorite fantasy worlds? Join us next time as we explore more of these fascinating parallels, revealing how the past continues to inspire the stories we tell today.